Hello everybody, Doom Eternal is finally here after I have waited 4 long years for the sequel to one of my favorite shooters of all time. Doom 2016 was a game I put a lot of time into, and I'm not kidding, like I put a lot of time into it. I even went back and tried to beat it on Ultra Nightmare, which is the mode where you essentially have one life, and if you die you start the game over from the start. I got about 60% through the game before I died on my last attempt and decided to kind of put it aside. I never ended up going back to it, but as you can tell, that takes a lot of commitment, and I really do enjoy the hell out of Doom. I think the new incarnation of it is fantastic, and of course I was really excited for Doom Eternal. Real quick, I do still have a head cold that I'm suffering from, so I apologize for any nasaliness you may hear in my voice, but I'm just so excited to talk about Doom that I cannot wait for this cold to go away. Like, I want to put this out now because I have a lot to say about it. If you're a person who's clicking on this video because you want to know whether Doom Eternal is good, and you just want to, go from there and pick it up, then here's my thoughts on it. If you liked Doom 2016, Doom Eternal is going to give you more Doom. And it gives you a lot more Doom, like significantly more. The campaign is roughly 16 to 20 hours long, depending on if you're a completionist and you like to go back and get this stuff, which is awesome. Like, that's a lot of Doom to go through. There's a way better multiplayer mode, and on top of all that, it just kind of amps everything up to 11 as far as the gameplay is concerned. It is not without its criticisms. I'll get to that later. But if you're one of those players that are just looking to, see if you wanted to pick up Doom or not, then yes, absolutely, 100%. Now, if you've never played Doom 2016, then by all means, go play that. Because play that first, just so you get the feel for it, because this game amps things up so much that if you don't have that reference for playing that game, Doom 2016 or Doom Eternal may be a little difficult. However, Doom 2016 is going to teach you some bad habits that Doom Eternal then tries to rectify. So it is a bit of a give and take. If you are looking to pick up Doom Eternal, I do have an affiliate link that was given to me from Bethesda, which goes over to Green Man Gaming, which, by the way, has the game on sale already, even though it is a brand new game. And I believe they have some kind of deal going on where there's a coupon code that can make it even further off. But if you want to support this channel and what I do, head over to the Green Man Gaming link in the description and in the comments, and you could go pick up Doom for a discounted price, which is great. And that's honestly where I got my game anyway, so it's perfectly fine. There's no issues with that. But let's talk about Doom Eternal in depth, because I have a lot to say about this game, and like I said, there are some criticisms here. So let's start with the most basic thing, the combat. Doom 2016 took that arena shooter combat that I grew up with, right? It is my jam. I grew up with Quake and Unreal Tournament, and those kind of shooters are my favorite things about, like, the shooter genre. It's the really quick, fast-paced, ultra-violent combat that requires a lot of twitch skill, but also a lot of planning ahead and trying to plan your moves before you go and do them, otherwise you can get yourself cornered and you have to keep moving, and it's really fast-paced and frenetic. I like that a lot. That is, like I said, that's my jam. I also like some slower games like Siege or even Counter-Strike and stuff like that. Like, those require a whole different type of gameplay. But if I had to choose one thing from, the shooter genre that I like the most, it is the arena style combat, or, games like Quake and Doom and Unreal Tournament. So Doom Eternal takes Doom 2016 combat and amps it up to 12, because it was already amped up to 11. So it just goes crazy with it on this one. And the way they do that is by creating, and I'm going to dive pretty deep into this analogy, so I apologize ahead of time, but they create a demonic chessboard during encounters. And different pieces, i.e. different demons, have different kinds of powers. And when different pieces are on the board at any given time, you have to treat different demons differently. You have to prioritize which demons you're taking out in which way, and the way they enforce this idea is through the idea that different enemies have weak points. Many of the demons, in fact, have weak points that you can damage and change their behavior. So, for example, and I'm not going to get too far into spoilers here, I think that the best part of playing the game is a little bit of the surprise and being like, oh crap, like that's happening. But one of the first demons they introduce you to really early in the game, like right as you start, is this cyber demon that is like a giant head on a spider tank with a big ol' cannon on it. And this sucker can climb up walls, and it's really quick and agile, and can like even hang off the ceiling and shoot at you with this giant cannon off its back. The thing with it is, that is a weak point, and the game even teaches you, like right on, like as soon as it introduces it to you, it's like, yo, if you want to kill this thing, if you want to neutralize this target, shoot the cannon. So you immediately take out your gun, you shoot the cannon, and sure enough, the demon changes AI. Suddenly it can't really do a whole lot to you. So it's just kind of throwing out some grenades and being a pest, more so than being a like actual threat. Because that gun that it has does so much damage, when one of those things comes out, and you notice it, you immediately switch and you shoot the heck out of that cannon, and you prioritize that as a target. The best part about that is so many demons in Doom Eternal have the same mechanic. They have something about them that if you take out their weak point, they will change how they behave. A Revenant, which is a classic, Doom demon, is a good example of this. They have the two cannons on either side on their back. If you shoot those cannons and disable them, then suddenly the thing becomes more of a melee guy, and he runs up to you and tries to hit you and stuff like that. There's a demon that I'm not going to go into crazy depth on, but it basically floats around on like a giant tank, and if you destroy the tank part of it and disable that weapon part of it, it then just kind of floats around like a I guess the only way to put it is like a hummingbird. It's really quick and agile and annoying. But anytime that you change one of the behaviors of these enemies, you suddenly have to now consider that as a threat that you're dealing with, right? Like that new AI, that new behavior changes the way that you then deal with all of the other enemies. And the little tiny enemies that are usually no threat, the imps or just the zombies and stuff like that, that honestly, you could just wade through all day without any issues. Those enemies suddenly become exponentially more dangerous because a big enemy just came out. And you have to focus on that big enemy, right? You have to shoot that dang spider tank's tail in order to destroy it. But when you are focusing on that, the little zombies become dangerous because they can creep up on you and start, hitting you, or you're trying to move around and maneuver, but they're getting in your way. It's all of these pieces together that create a very in-depth and strategic gameplay that, in many ways, was non-existent in Doom 2016. I think Doom 2016 had some of these elements, but they really go all out when it comes to Doom Eternal. This is doubled down on the fact that your weapons, just like in Doom 2016, have different alternate fire modes, right? Your shotgun has the grenade mode. Essentially, it's like these little sticky bombs that you can shoot at people and they blow up and do AoE damage, and you can upgrade those further. I'll get into that in a minute, but it also has like a chain gun mode or an automatic fire shotgun mode, which is really cool. It's like an assault rifle shotgun. As you can imagine, that's pretty powerful. But which one you decide to use, because of course, once you unlock both of them, you can freely switch between them on the fly. Which one you decide to use at any given time is dependent on what pieces are on the chessboard. The assault rifle is a really perfect example of this. It has a sniper mode for its gun. You can, hold right click, it zooms in, and you get one really powerful shot. You know what that gun is really good at doing? Taking that damn gun out on the back of the spider tank. It is extremely good at it. You have to use your skillfully placed shot in order to do it, which means you kind of have to sit there for a second. Maybe you do it while you're moving and you really snipe them out, but if you're not a hyper precision player, then it's going to be kind of difficult to do while moving. But if you're able to do it, then it feels really, really fun, because you're like, I can't believe I just hit that shot, right? One, I just hit that shot. Two, that guy is now disabled, and now my mind has to focus on something else. And you're always considering what weapons and weapon mods you have available to you. And of course, like I said earlier, when you upgrade both weapon mods available and you have them both there, you could switch freely between them. So now you're having to think about all of the mods and stuff that you have available as well. Of course, you have grenades. You have your standard like frag grenade thing. It shoots it off of the little shoulder cannon that you got. But hey, you know what else happens with that? They have a cryo grenade, which you can then use to freeze enemies. And of course, you could switch between those. And on top of that, there's a flamethrower. The flamethrower is really cool because any enemy that you hit that is burning, so you burn them with the flamethrower, then you shoot at them, they drop armor. But this brings me on to the next piece of this puzzle, right? So far you have enemies and enemy types and the different pieces that they are on the board. Then you have weapons, weapon mods, and all of the stuff that comes along with that, which is really cool. The third big piece is, of course, your resource management. Your health, your armor, and your ammo. All of those are different resources that you are having to manage very precisely throughout the course of an engagement. You do not have infinite ammo on your weapons. You are not able to just get a bunch of ammo through glory kills or a bunch of, ammo because it's all over the ground. No, you are constantly managing how much ammo you have left, because the only way to really get a good amount of ammo is to use your chainsaw, which, similar to 2016, it does have ammo to it, right? You can find the fuel tanks, which will give you more ammo, but it always keeps one little pip on it, right? So you can always use it once that one little pip recharges. You don't necessarily have to find fuel for that, which allows you to use that chainsaw not necessarily to take down a big enemy, right? In 2016, you would use it sometimes. You're like, that is a priority target. I need to kill that thing. I'm going to waste all 4 of my fuel with this chainsaw to take that sucker down so I don't even have to worry about it in the fight. You can still do that with the chainsaw, but it is much more of a hindrance to do that because you're going to be needing to use your chainsaw to fill up your ammo that you just expended, killing all the other little enemies. So it's the process of dealing with these resources in combination with everything else that creates a highly, and I'm not even kidding with this, highly strategic shooter. However, something to consider is that for a lot of people, that sounds amazingly overwhelming and like they just will not want to touch the game. Honestly, it's kind of like describing the StarCraft 2 meta to a lot of people and just seeing them glaze over and be like, well, I'm not interested. That is way too complicated. I can maybe do one of those things at any given time, not 50 of those things all within, fractions of a second of each other. It's overwhelming. And when you describe Doom Eternal this way and you kind of go into the depth of their game design, which, by the way, I believe is a masterclass in game design, then you can overwhelm people. But at the end of the day, something to keep in mind is Doom Eternal also gives you a masterclass in stagger. It is slowly staggering ideas to you. It is slowly giving you more things to manage. You start off with one weapon. Very soon after that, you get your second weapon, but it takes a while to get your third weapon. It does give you some upgrades on those first 2, so you can kind of play between them and get a feel for it, and then it's slowly introducing enemies to you, and suddenly what you felt like if you're like me and you heard about all these concepts before Doom Eternal came out, you're like, I don't know if I want to manage that. That sounds like a lot. But once you actually get into it and you learn the systems over their course of staggered play, it does a really good job of introducing these ideas to you in a way that you are going to get a feel for them and enjoy them. You are going to learn what it means to handle your ammo and your health and your armor and all of the pieces on any given board at a time, because you will start learning the strategies for everything. That does not mean that it's going to be easy. That does not mean that you are just going to wade through this game. This game, as it stands, is a harder game than Doom 2016. But that is a good thing. It makes your victories feel way more earned when you get them. It makes you feel way more engaged with the game because you're having to focus on so much more going on at any given time. That's not like there just to keep you engaged. It's there to create a meaningful gameplay experience, and it does a fantastic job of doing that. But at the same time, you know, you're not just doing all this stuff just because you're doing it because you're freaking having fun. Like the combat is good and you want to engage with this stuff. You feel really good when you snipe that spider tank's little turret on the back, or you shoot a revenant's cannons, or you do this kind of stuff in the middle of combat, because they have created a really satisfying gameplay that is enjoyable while, you know, it continuously adds in these new things, but at the same time is not necessarily repetitive. That's the thing. Like, you could play chess 50 different times, and for those 50 different times, you're probably going to play completely different than the last time, or you're going to have different moves and it's going to play out differently. It's the same concept here. You know, you're going to go into an arena, which I'll talk about the arenas in a second here, but you're going to go into an arena and you're going to fight, and they're going to introduce different demons during the fight at different stagger rates. So the pieces that you're having to deal with at any given time are going to feel different. You can have an arena, and there are some levels like this where you will fight in it one time, and then you'll go off on the level and fight additional stuff. You'll come back to that one. You have to fight there again with a bunch of enemies that are going to come at you. And it's going to feel completely different because they're going to throw different enemies at you. And suddenly the arena has changed the way that it feels. Like, you're not fighting things the same way that you would have the first time, because there's just so much different things going on. Even though they're a lot of the time using the same demons, they're just using them in strategically different ways. It feels like to me that Doom Eternal, all of the enemies that pop out at any given time are not fodder. They give you specific enemies at specific times because they want you to try and solve the puzzle. And I guess at the core of everything with Doom Eternal, this is a thinking man's game. This is a game that you are going to be mentally exhausted after a couple hours of play, because the game is going to challenge you, and it will challenge you to the point where it kills you. You are going to die in this game a lot more than you did 2016, but that is so that way you would learn how to do things. Like the way things spawn, the way they stagger and spawn and everything like that, you're going to know the way things spawn because it's not random, it is intentional. If you die in an encounter, suddenly you know, like, oh, that thing killed me. I should probably save these resources for that, or switch things over. And I know that these guys are going to come out at this particular time, so I can handle that. I could be in this place over here, and it's just all about learning. And in some ways, this is a very Dark Souls-like game. It is a game that challenges you and tries to push you to your limits. It tries to extract as much performance out of you as possible, and it does it in a freaking fantastic way that I cannot praise enough. Like I said earlier, this game is a masterclass in game design. There is, at any given point, a really fun shooter puzzle to figure out. And then this all ties into the fact that the game is fun to play. Like, the shooting is obviously really good. It's Doom. And on top of that, the traversal is really good. So when you have enemies that are trying to get at you and run at you and forcing you to move, moving around feels incredible. It doesn't take very long for you to unlock a dash ability where you're able to kind of dash through the battlefield. And this dash ability honestly reminds me of something like Hades, where you're running around and you're dashing in Hades. If you've never played Hades, it is a really, really good roguelike game made by Supergiant Games, people who did like Bastion and Transistor Empire. I would highly suggest playing Hades if you haven't, but it's kind of the same way. You're using your dash strategically and as a resource because you have a limited amount of dashes that recharge. So you're able to use these to traverse environments or get away from enemies or get closer to enemies. And of course, like 2016, you have a bunch of other upgrades available to you, and the game slowly staggers them so you're not overwhelmed with all this stuff, gaining XP and whatnot, but you get things like suit upgrades and runes and all this stuff that changes the way that you're going to play the game and changes the way that you're going to customize your play. As you go throughout the game, you are going to customize everything. You're going to customize your weapons and your suit and everything. And they even have skins this time around. They have weapon skins that you can put on and enemy skins that you can unlock. Some of that stuff is pre-order bonuses, but it all isn't. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that you can unlock just because they have weekly challenges and stuff like that. It is phenomenal. Like I said earlier, if you liked Doom 2016, this is more Doom. It's more Doom and it's more intense Doom. It is so good when it comes to a game that I cannot recommend it enough. And I feel like anyone who enjoyed Doom 2016 has to play this game. And of course, I haven't even mentioned the soundtrack. It does return in a fantastic way. I've noticed the early part of the game feels like it's not as good of a soundtrack, but as the game continues on, it does introduce more of the music that you kind of come to expect, and it's not so ambient. There is a lot of ambient music. They've kind of changed the way that the ambient music works and the feel of everything, but for the most part, you will get to those cool Doom music moments when you get further into the game. Things get more epic, which over the long term, I think is a good thing, because it teaches you like, hey, we have a lot to build too. There is so much of this game that if we started at 12 with the music, there's nowhere to go. And this is a basic music thing. If anyone is a musician, you know this. If you start so high when it comes to like your energy, your power, there's nowhere to go from there. You kind of have to start low in order to have some build and some growth in musical pieces, and they do a good job of slowly doing that throughout the course of the campaign. And yeah, if you like the music in 2016, you're gonna like it here, but it may take you a couple hours to kind of get to the points where you're like, oh yeah, here we go, here's Doom, I like this. The next thing I wanted to talk about with Doom Eternal is its performance, as in how it performs on a engine level. And I want to say that Doom Eternal performs mind-blowingly well, at least on PC. I haven't seen it on console or even on Nintendo Switch or anything like that. And even if you're playing it on those, you can't really adjust many settings anyways. You're getting what you're getting. But I'm sure based on the PC performance that you are not going to really notice the game performing poorly on those systems. In fact, it probably will perform far better than many other shooters that you have ever played on the consoles, just because of how well it is optimized and how well it plays in its current state on PC. For reference, I am running the game at native 1440p on the Ultra Nightmare settings, everything completely maxed out. There's nothing that can go any higher. Everything is completely maxed out. 1440p native, 160 FPS. 160 FPS at native 1440p, everything maxed out. What? I'm also running the latest NVIDIA drivers, so I don't know if that changes anything. I don't know if it makes it worse or better, but I have installed them. They're the game ready drivers. Now, my PC is no chump. I should actually give you guys the specs on it just so you can have a reference on it. I am using for graphics card, I'm using a GeForce RTX 2070 Super, which is no chump card. Like, that is a really, really powerful card. For my processor, I have an AMD Ryzen 7 3800X. It is running at about 4.2 gigahertz. I have not overclocked it simply because I just haven't had the need to for it. I have 16 gigabytes of RAM, and of course I'm running on Windows 10. So like, the game is also running off of a SSD, which means that things are loading really fast. That should definitely be kept in mind. But my PC is a bit of a monster. If you're running an Intel processor that is, maybe about the same as mine as far as performance or generation, then you may notice either slightly better or slightly worse performance depending on the rest of your computer. But for the most part, it runs on a bunch of computers, a bunch of variety of different computers extremely well. It's well optimized. This crazy thing that they have developed with this engine runs so freaking well, and it has to. It literally has to, because in order to keep up the smoothness and the pace of gameplay at the level that they're running it, you really do need the game to be running quickly. You need more than 60 FPS, in my opinion. If I had a monitor that actually could, support 120 or 144 hertz, then I probably would be enjoying it even further. But the game itself has a bunch of support as far as it running well on a wide variety of systems. If you have a worse system than me by just a tiny margin, you're probably going to see similar performance, especially if you're running on 1080 instead of 1440p. You're going to notice about a 40 to 50% increase in performance than what I'm running. So if you could run Doom 2016, you can run Doom Eternal just fine. You're not going to see any issues there. The only thing I would hesitate with is if you have a bad processor, you may notice some frame rate dropping because there is a lot going on in this game, and a good processor, definitely a good graphics card, will help perform the game far better. But again, if you're running on console, you're not going to notice any of these things. It's just something that I want to mention because as a PC focused game, even though it is on consoles, this is a game that it performs so incredibly well. It makes me wish all games could run in this engine. It's just I'm at that point where I'm like, man, I wish they could just like sell out the Vulkan engine or whatever they're using, because it is freaking awesome. I love this. But now I think it's time to talk about my criticisms of the game, because the game is not perfect. And my criticisms of the game primarily come down to tone. One of the things I liked about Doom 2016 so much is it starts off with sending a message, you know, with the Doomslayer getting out, just bashing a demon's head into the sarcophagus or whatever he was buried in, and then having some exposition thrown at him on a monitor, and he just like punches the monitor and gets rid of it, and telling the player like, yo, like, don't worry about the story. This is going to be ridiculous. This is going to be, this could be Fast and the Furious, the game, right? This is going to be so ridiculous that you cannot take it seriously. Doom Eternal feels, for me, like it's kind of changed its mind on that one. It's like, it is chaotic. It is, there's a lot going on with it, but we have a story now. And if you really like the Doom story, then here's all this cool exposition. And at no point do I really feel like the Doomslayer just wants to go kill demons. It kind of feels like he's kind of invested in the story. And weirdly enough, to me, that completely changes the tone. And I don't really like that. I feel like, for me, the tone of the game in 2016 was perfect. And there was no faulting it for its humor and for how well they wrote that game. The humor is still there in this game, but I feel like it's less predominant. I notice it less. It's less, what's the word I'm looking for? It's less obvious. And you kind of have to be looking for it, or, you know, be understanding of it before you notice it. Part of that, I believe, is because they went a little bit more subtle. It's not so like right up in your face of like, ha ha ha, this is funny, you gotta laugh at this. And instead they allow the player to kind of discover the humor there. And I think that while that is better written, right, I think that's a better way to write humor, it does not necessarily convey the same tone that I liked with Doom 2016. So from a writing perspective, I prefer, so far, I have not beaten the game, but I prefer Doom 2016 as opposed to Doom Eternal. That said, Doom Eternal does give you some really cool stuff, and I'm not going to spoil it, like I said earlier, but it does give you story moments in the game where you go, that is metal, that is really, really cool. One of the things that they do well is that you have like the ship that you're on. It's like a giant like Doomslayer space station up in orbit of Earth, and you do go back to that on a pretty regular basis, you know, in between missions and stuff. And the cool thing with that is you do unlock little things here and there, but there is a room for the Doomslayer that you could go into, and his room is filled with a bunch of really funny stuff. I really enjoy that kind of thing, but I feel like Doom did really well when the story was thought of as kind of like a secondary thing. And if you really wanted an idea of what was going on, it's like, look in the codex. Like, if you're really that big of a nerd, just look at the codex. There's a bunch of really good story in there. And it's kind of the same for Eternal for me, but it feels like they're giving me too much. I don't want to know about all this stuff. I don't want exposition. I just want to shoot demons. And for the most part, Eternal does a good job of that, but it doesn't do, in my opinion, as good of a job as 2016. Another criticism that I have is that Doom 2016 made you feel like a god, like you were wading through demons, and it felt really good. You're like, I cannot believe how awesome I feel right now. I feel like I am the one person in this world that can actually save the world from all these demons. it empowered you. It made you feel awesome. And that was such a unique thing that is really difficult to do in games, because making you feel overpowered, like, this is kind of boring, and making you feel like you are a literal like demon slaying god is a really fine line. If you go too far one way or the other, you're gonna break that balance. 2016 had a really good balance for that. Doom Eternal also has a really good balance, but requires you to play at a high level. If you're playing this game well, you do feel like you are a mastermind. When you get into those really difficult levels and you're figuring out this demonic chess really well, and you're playing to your absolute maximum, and you feel like there is no better that you can possibly play, and you are managing to scrape by and do it, and when you finally defeat like a really difficult encounter, Doom Eternal feels great. You're like, yes, that was perfect. That is what I wanted to feel from Doom 2016, and it's brought back here, and it's really good. But then there are times where the game expects you to continue to play at that level consistently, and it honestly is a bit of a mental gymnastic. You get exhausted playing Doom Eternal over the course of time. I think going out and taking a break from games is really healthy. I think everybody should get up every couple hours, or at least an hour every hour to, like walk around and whatnot. As a person who plays a lot of Diablo and is really invested in the action RPG community, I probably should do that a lot more than I do. I could probably play Doom, or not Doom, but I could probably play Diablo 3 for 8 or 9 hours before I have to get up, not including bathroom breaks or anything like that. So for me, I really wanted to jump into Doom Eternal and just power game it and just really enjoy it. But I found myself after an hour or two having to take a break, having to be like, yo, I'm tired. Like, my brain is having to do a lot of thinking in these combat encounters. I'm tired, but that's not a bad thing. It is enjoyable to have those mental gymnastics, because it makes the difficult parts of the game feel more rewarding, and it makes when you actually succeed feel more rewarding. It's just a matter of, you're not going to be able to power game this necessarily unless you're playing on the easiest difficulty and you're just waiting some demons. But that's another thing to consider, is what difficulty do you play this game on? You can change difficulty at any time, up or down, but most players are probably going to want to play on, I think it's Hurt Me Plenty. I think that's like the one up from the lowest. That's like your normal difficulty. I'm playing on what is essentially hard difficulty, and I'm enjoying it greatly. I really haven't had a bunch of moments where I felt like I couldn't progress. I feel like there's been a couple encounters where I got really screwed and in a bad spot, and I learned from that, but I haven't really had a situation where I felt like I could not progress in the game. I just felt like I needed to play better, and for some people that is going to be too much. For some people, Doom 2016 had a really good difficulty balance, and Doom Eternal is going to push that a little too far, and they may need to turn the difficulty down. So I want to say, like, if you're one of those players, do not feel discouraged from turning it down. If you want to turn it down, you're going to have a better time. You're going to have way more fun if you feel like you can wade through more demons and just kind of get through the game rather than suffering greatly. So keep that in mind as something that, is a possibility. If you're picking up the game, don't necessarily be married to one difficulty setting. Be ready to be flexible on it. Personally, I feel like the difficulty setting I'm playing on is perfect and I don't need to change it, but for some people that may be a different thing, right? Not everybody put as much time into Doom 2016 as I did, and honestly, I'm not even that great at it. But there are people who are way better at the game than I am, and I feel like even they are going to have some fun with the challenge that is provided within the game. So to kind of tie this all together, I feel like Doom Eternal learns from the past. It learns from Doom 2016. It learned that Doom 2016 relied a little too heavily on battle arenas for you to fight demons, and going between battle arenas was essentially the game. It was kind of a repetitive process. It was fight in an arena, go, get to the next arena, fight in that arena, go. And of course, both games have plenty of secrets and stuff for you to discover, but I feel like Doom 2016 was focused on you finding those while you were in those interims between arenas, whereas Doom Eternal doesn't focus on those arenas so much. It does have arenas that you can go and fight in, and they're fantastic and they're really well designed. I like that about Eternal. But at the same time, it has a bunch of secrets that you can find everywhere. It'll just be some traversal that you're going through between arenas, and yeah, you might find something there. Otherwise, it might just be like a gated area on an arena that you're fighting in. You're like, wait a second, did I just see a question mark? And you're like, what was that? And you like run past it, and you're like, I need to note that for later, because you're in the middle of fighting 50 demons. And then you go back to it, and you're like, huh, like how do I figure this out? And it does provide a really good back and forth of you're constantly wanting to find these secrets, not necessarily because you have to, but because they're kind of cool to find. And if you're not into finding those things, you could just completely ignore them. You might be a little less powerful by the end of the game because some of them do give you upgrades and stuff like that. But for the most part, a lot of it is just cool little unlocks, so you can kind of ignore it. But it's the fact that Doom Eternal does not focus on you constantly being in a battle arena and then fighting a bunch of waves of monsters. It changes things up. And the result of that is that Doom Eternal allows you to have a lengthier game. It allows you to play a game that is going to take 18, 20 hours to play and not feel super repetitive. From my understanding, the game does go on a little long. It's a little long in the tooth, but it's not because it's overstaying its welcome. It's just you feel like it's going to end. It's kind of like Lord of the Rings. You feel like it's about to end, and then it kind of keeps having multiple endings, right? From my understanding, that's how Doom Eternal kind of ends up playing out. But the fact of the matter is, you're gonna want to play all the way through it because the game is just so much fun to play in itself. And I think that that is its big achievement. This game is so much fun to play. It marries a really good soundtrack with amazing visuals, mind-blowingly so, that runs incredibly smooth, with fast, frenetic gameplay that isn't just ultra-violent and quick and whatever. It's also massively engaging and strategic. It's like you're playing a game of StarCraft at the same time of playing a game of Unreal Tournament. It's crazy how much there's going on at any given time, but the game does such a good job of introducing you to these concepts that by the time you get to the points where you are being pushed to your limits, it feels so satisfying to finish that and be like, I can't believe I did that. I scraped by. That was a lot of fun. I freaking love it. It's just everything about it. I say if you liked Doom 2016, you're going to love Doom Eternal. It's more of the good stuff that you want, and it changes things up. I have not played the multiplayer mode, so I cannot comment on that, but they changed it up from the previous game. It is no longer a deathmatch mode. It is a asymmetrical gameplay mode where there's one person playing as the Doomslayer and two people are playing as demons, and you're trying to kill the Doomslayer. That's really cool. I think there's also a invasion mode, which happens kind of like a Dark Souls thing, but I could be wrong on that one. I have yet to see it, but that's because everybody is slowly trickling into the servers, and I'm playing a bit early, so there's not a whole lot of people there. So there's like a bunch of things when it comes to, you know, the multiplayer that is extra and tacked on if you really are looking for it, but at the end of the day, if it's not something you're interested in, you can completely ignore it and still get a fantastic, phenomenal game. If you're looking to pick up Doom Eternal, as I said earlier in this video, I do have an affiliate link that was given to me. You can head to it in the description and in the comments, and from there you can pick up the game, which is currently on a discount. And from everybody who currently in this day and age is being confined to their homes because of the coronavirus, now it's a perfect time to get away and absolutely demolish demons in a really, really freaking good game. If you've had a chance to play Doom Eternal, I actually do really want to know your thoughts on it. What do you think? Put that in the comments below. But with all of that being said, thank you guys for watching and supporting the channel, and we shall see you guys next time.